Okay, so welcome to the video on the student checklist, the 1A form. This is one of the forms that are required for all projects. Just to go through what you need on here, you need your name, you need your grade level, your email, phone number. If you're working with team members, you can list them here. Typically, people work individually. If you are working as a team, it's just something that I ask that you speak to me about ahead of time. Title of the project, so something that was also on the Form 1. This will be preloaded for you, but you have to fill in the school, so just Parkland High School, the phone number for the high school, the address. Adult sponsor is me. Remember, I'm your sponsor. We'll talk about the term for like if you're working with somebody else. So like if you're working with like an adult supervisor, say at a college location or something like that. We'll talk about that in one of the later forms. Just include my email. I know it says phone/email. Email is the best way for people to contact me, so just include that one there. It says for number 5, does this project need approval or other pre-approval? So if you have like a review board approval or something like that, if you're not sure which one to click here, hopefully you went through and did the form wizard first. The form wizard will indicate to you whether or not you would need IRB approval. So there are certain forms that indicate that. So for example, like a Form 3 or a Form 1C, those forms both mean that you require pre-approval. If you do not need pre-approval, then you can put down your tentative start date. If you do need pre-approval, you leave this box blank because you have to wait in order to get approval to start your project. Is this a continuation project? Either yes or no. It asks you that question in the form wizard as well. If it is something that is a continuation project, you need to include the previous year's abstract and your research plan or your project summary. So the other thing you have to explain is how this project is different from the previous years. It's just looking for you to check this box because you will have to fill out a Form 7 if your project is a continuation. So here where it says explain how this project is new and different, you fill that out on the continuation form. So if you're submitting one of those, you just check the box. If this doesn't apply to you, if it's not a continuation form, then you just leave those empty. So then this year's laboratory experiment and data collection, your actual start date and your end date. This is something, again, you can fill out if your project doesn't require pre-approval. If it does require pre-approval, you can put down like the tentative start date that you're hoping for, but you need to hear back before you can do that. And please, 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 this has to be after the forms are due. Right? If you put down a date on here before the forms are due, that's a huge red flag for people because it shows that you're starting your project ahead of time. So this really cannot be before the beginning of November if you're waiting for project approval. Keep in mind, if you want to do something and you want to start early, you can submit your forms early. There's nothing wrong with that at all. My recommendation for you that we'll talk about at the meeting is if you require IRB approval, you should get your forms in early. So if you're unsure what to put down for the actual start date, it has to be after your paperwork is submitted. I think giving the people at PJAS and Lehigh Valley Science Fair 2 weeks to go through your paperwork is reasonable. So if you want to use that as a guideline, if you're doing something that does require IRB approval, actual start date should be 2 weeks after your forms are submitted. That should be fair enough. Where will you conduct your project? If you're using a research institute, this would be a college, right? Whereas a college is not a school. School would be like if you're doing it at the high school. In the field, if you're doing stuff like research outside, that certainly works. If you're doing things at home or other, sometimes people work at, say, like a parent's job site or something like that. It's not technically a research institution. It's not a college. But if you say you have a parent who works in a lab, you're using their lab under their supervision, that would be other, right? So you will need this in some instances. You have to include the name and address of all non-home and non-school work sites. So for example, if you're working at parent's place of business, something like that, or a research institute, you certainly need that on there. So I appreciate you taking the time to go through this. Make sure these two, it says that you complete a research plan or a project summary, and then the abstract for all projects after experimentation. So you submit the abstract after you're done. The only scenario in which you would really need that here is if you're doing a continuation project, right? Then you need the abstract from the previous year. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I will pick up with you in the next video.